You keep trying, and nothing shifts. You visualize the life you want. You repeat the affirmations. You follow the steps everyone swears will work. And yet, the gap between what you desire and what shows up in your reality feels wider every single day. So you start questioning yourself. Maybe you're doing it wrong. Maybe you're broken. Maybe this whole thing is just a fantasy for people who got lucky. But here's the truth nobody tells you. There's an invisible layer of reality that sits between your thoughts and physical outcomes. And until you understand how it operates, you'll keep spinning your wheels. The good news? Modern physics has mapped it, measured it, proven it exists. Scientists call it the zero-point field. And it's not philosophy, it's not belief. It's the energetic foundation of everything that exists, including you, including the life you're trying to create. Before we go further, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The algorithm only delivers this kind of content to people who show genuine interest. So make sure you don't miss what's coming next, because what you're about to discover will completely rewire how you think about manifestation, consciousness, and the creation of reality itself. Let's start with the lie. Since childhood, you've been taught that empty space is empty, that between objects, there's nothing, that the universe is a collection of separate things floating in dead, inert vacuum. This idea shaped everything. How you see your life, your problems, your attempts to change. You think you're alone, isolated, trying to force results in a world that doesn't respond. Except quantum physics demolished that illusion over a century ago. And what it discovered is so unsettling that most people simply ignore it. The quantum vacuum isn't empty space. It's an energy field in constant activity. Even when you remove all particles, all visible matter, the field remains, vibrating, fluctuating, generating and annihilating pairs of virtual particles in infinitesimal fractions of a second. Energy never reaches zero. It oscillates around a minimum value called zero-point energy. Think of a spider's web stretched across a garden. You can't see the silk threads until dew collects on them. But the structure was always there, connecting everything. The quantum vacuum works the same way. It's an invisible web that links every point in space, every atom in your body, every thought passing through your mind, every possibility waiting to become real. And here's what changes the entire conversation. This field interacts with matter. It exerts pressure. It alters trajectories. It creates measurable effects in the physical world. This isn't mathematical abstraction. It's concrete reality. Scientists discovered something remarkable when they started looking closely at atoms. Electrons don't just orbit nuclei in perfect circles. They jitter. They vibrate with a restless energy that shouldn't be there if empty space were truly empty. Where does that energy come from? The quantum vacuum. The electrons are constantly being nudged by fluctuations in the field surrounding them. That's not a metaphor, that's mechanics. Physical interaction between what appears solid and what appears void. Except nothing is void. Everything is field, and fields talk to each other. They influence each other. They shape each other. So when you reach out to touch a solid object, you're not touching solid matter. You're feeling the electromagnetic field generated by electrons that are themselves being pushed around by the quantum vacuum. Reality isn't made of things. It's made of fields interacting with other fields. And consciousness? Consciousness is one of those fields. In 1948, Dutch physicist Hendrik Casimir predicted something bizarre. He said if you place two metal plates parallel to each other, electrically neutral, separated by a nanometric distance in vacuum, they would be attracted toward one another. No electric charge, no magnetism, no known classical force. The explanation? Quantum vacuum fluctuations. The space between the plates restricts which wavelengths of electromagnetic waves can exist there. Outside the plates, all frequencies are allowed. Inside, only some. This creates a pressure difference, and that difference pushes the plates together. When Casimir published his prediction, many thought it was too exotic to be real. But in 1997, Steve Lamoureux measured the effect with 5% precision. In 2001, Federico Capasso refined the measurements even further. The Casimir effect is real, replicable, undeniable. Two metal plates being pushed by something that supposedly doesn't exist, by the void, by nothing. Except it's not nothing. It's structured, active, creative energy. It's the zero-point field. Now pause for a moment. Notice what this means. The reality you see, touch, measure isn't solid. It emerges from an invisible ocean of energy that's always present, always active, always interacting. The particles forming your body, the chair you're sitting on, the air you breathe, all of them are temporary excitations of this underlying field. Particles aren't things, they're events, ripples, vibration patterns in the zero-point field. When the field vibrates a specific way, an electron appears. Another way, a photon appears. Change the frequency, change the particle. Change the pattern, change reality. So matter isn't separate from the vacuum. It's born from it, sustained by it, returns to it. The quantum vacuum is the womb of physical reality. Imagine a guitar string. When you pluck it, the string vibrates at certain frequencies. Each frequency produces a different note. The string itself doesn't change. What changes is the pattern of vibration moving through it. The quantum vacuum works the same way. It's like an infinite, multidimensional instrument, and particles are the notes being played. An electron is one frequency, a photon is another, a quark is yet another. Same underlying field, different vibrational patterns. This isn't poetry. This is quantum field theory, the most accurate and experimentally verified framework we have for understanding physical reality. And it tells us something radical. What you call solid matter is actually frozen music. Patterns of energy temporarily stabilized in specific configurations. Those configurations aren't permanent. Particles pop in and out of existence. They emerge from the field, interact briefly, and dissolve back into it. At the quantum level, nothing stays solid for long. Everything flows. Everything fluctuates. Everything dances between being and non-being. You might be thinking, okay, but that's the quantum realm. Tiny particles. What does that have to do with my life? With chairs and tables and bank accounts and relationships? Here's the connection. Everything you experience as solid and real is made of those dancing particles. Your body is a temporary pattern in the quantum field. Your thoughts are electrochemical signals generated by particles that emerged from the vacuum moments ago. The world you navigate is a cascade of quantum events manifesting as classical reality. You're not separate from the field. You are the field, temporarily organized in a pattern that calls itself human. For decades, physicists treated consciousness as an accidental byproduct, something that emerges from neural complexity but doesn't interact with the physical world in measurable ways. Except that view is collapsing, because emerging theories based on extensions of quantum mechanics suggest something radical. Consciousness might be a special quantum field. David Bohm, one of the most brilliant physicists of the 20th century, developed an alternative interpretation of quantum mechanics. He proposed that each particle is guided by a wave field carrying what he called quantum potential. This potential isn't energy in the classical sense. It's information, active information. What does active information mean? It means the particle isn't pushed by external force. It's guided by an information pattern encoded in the field, and it uses its own energy to follow that pattern. The field doesn't supply energy. It supplies direction, form, meaning. Bohm and his collaborator Basil Hiley interpreted this as information that becomes active when processed by the quantum entity. The particle reads the field, decodes the information, and adjusts its behavior. It's like a ship using its own energy to follow instructions from a map. Now, expand this idea. Living organisms aren't systems in equilibrium. They operate far from thermodynamic balance. They maintain complex structure, process information, respond to environments in ways isolated particles cannot. They have an accompanying wave field. And that field, according to Bohm's model adapted for biology, can be thought of as a consciousness field. This consciousness field isn't separate from the organism. Together, they form a single physical system. And the consciousness potential associated with this field functions as active information, capable of encoding data about the entire environment. Not just local surroundings, but boundary conditions, contexts, possibilities. Consciousness processes information from the zero-point field and responds to it. In other words, consciousness isn't in the brain. Consciousness interacts with the brain. The brain is the interface. The consciousness field is the antenna. And that antenna is tuned to the quantum vacuum, to the energetic substrate from which all matter emerges. Let me show you why this isn't speculation. In December 2024, a study from Wellesley College published surprising experimental results. Researchers tested the effect of anesthetics on rats, but with a crucial detail. Before applying anesthesia, they administered a drug that binds to microtubules inside neurons. Microtubules are cylindrical structures forming the internal skeleton of cells. They have peculiar quantum properties. Some scientists, like Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose, propose that consciousness emerges from coherent quantum processes inside these microtubules. What happened in the experiment? Rats that received the drug binding to microtubules took significantly longer to lose consciousness under anesthesia. The drug interfered with the anesthetic's action, and the only coherent explanation is that anesthetics act on microtubules to cause unconsciousness. There's no other known classical pathway by which anesthetic binding to microtubules would reduce brain activity and cause loss of consciousness. The only viable explanation is that consciousness operates at the quantum level, and that microtubules are part of the system connecting consciousness to the zero-point field. This isn't philosophical theory. It's experimental evidence. Consciousness has a quantum basis, and quantum fields interact with the vacuum, with the energetic substrate sustaining all reality. So when you visualize, when you focus attention, when you hold a specific emotional state, you're not just thinking positive. You're encoding information in a quantum field that directly interacts with the vacuum from which matter emerges. Notice the shift. It's not about forcing the universe to respond. It's about aligning your consciousness field with specific patterns of active information. When you do this coherently, the zero-point field responds. Because it's not separate from you. It's the medium where you exist. Particles are excitations of the vacuum. Consciousness is a field interacting with those excitations. When consciousness processes active information coherently, It influences how the vacuum collapses into matter. You're not manipulating reality from outside. You're part of the system creating reality. Co-creator, interface, processor of active information. Think of a seed containing the complete pattern of a tree. It doesn't have enough energy to build the tree alone, but it has the information. And when conditions are right, the tree grows, information unfolds, updates, manifests. The zero-point field works this way. It carries pure potentiality, and consciousness is what selects, among all potentialities, which one will actualize. Not through force, through resonance, through coherence, through vibrational alignment with the desired pattern. Quantum physicists talk about superposition. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. When you observe, the wave function collapses. A specific state emerges. The rest disappears from observable reality. Except observation isn't passive. Observation at the quantum level involves interaction. And in the case of conscious living organisms, observation involves processing active information. You're not just looking. You're decoding, interpreting, responding, and the zero-point field responds back. This isn't magic, it's reciprocity. It's how the field interacts with systems capable of processing information coherently. So the real question isn't, does consciousness create reality? The question is, how are you encoding information in the field? Because if you carry conflicting patterns, wanting this but believing that, desiring one thing but feeling another, the field receives confused signal, incoherent information, and the result is instability. In the late 1970s, British biologist Rupert Sheldrake proposed an idea so radical the scientific community tried to ignore it. He said the laws of nature aren't laws, they're habits, and that an invisible field exists, not of energy but of information, that carries form patterns through space and time without loss of intensity. He called these fields morphogenetic fields. Morpho meaning form, genetic meaning origin. Fields that generate form, that organize systems, that transmit structure from one place to another, one time to another, without needing direct physical connection. The idea seemed absurd until he started presenting evidence. Crystals of a new chemical substance never existed before are difficult to form the first time. But after they're formed once, anywhere in the world, they begin forming more easily in all other laboratories. Even without contact between scientists, even without conscious information exchange. Rats trained to solve a specific maze in London improved the performance of rats solving the same maze in New York. No contact, no classical explanation. Sheldrake proposed that morphogenetic fields carry organizational patterns, and that similar systems resonate with each other through this field. He called this phenomenon morphic resonance. Fields communicate, patterns propagate, information transmits without physical mediation. And here's the crucial point. Morphogenetic fields aren't made of measurable energy. They're made of structured information, like Bohm's quantum potential, like patterns encoded in the zero-point field. Maybe they're not different things. Maybe they're different descriptions of the same underlying reality. Sheldrake didn't use quantum language. He came from biology. But the conceptual structure is parallel. Field carrying information, information propagating without loss, systems resonating when sharing similar structure, form preceding matter. Now connect this with consciousness. If consciousness is a quantum field, and quantum fields interact with the zero-point vacuum, then consciousnesses can resonate with each other through this shared substrate. Not telepathy in the mystical sense, resonance in the physical sense. Two guitar strings tuned to the same frequency. You pluck one, the other vibrates, not because direct physical connection exists, but because they're coupled through the medium, in this case, air, and when one introduces vibration into that medium, the other responds. Consciousnesses coupled through the zero-point field work this way. You think intensely about someone, not because you're sending thoughts, but because your consciousness field is vibrating in a specific pattern. And if the other person's consciousness field is tuned, receptive, in coherent state, they catch the resonance. How many times have you thought of someone and seconds later received their message? How many times have you felt something about a situation before it happened? How many times have you known without knowing how you knew? Quantum mechanics reveals something unsettling about observation. Before measurement, particles don't have definite properties. They exist in superposition, multiple states simultaneously. An electron can be spinning up and down at the same time. A photon can pass through two slits simultaneously. Position, momentum, energy, all indefinite until observed. Then you measure, and the wave function collapses. One specific state emerges. The particle decides where it is, what it's doing, how it's moving. Except it's not really deciding. Something about the act of observation forces it to choose. For decades, physicists argued about what causes collapse. Is it the measuring device? The interaction with classical systems? Or is it consciousness itself? Recent interpretations suggest consciousness plays a direct role. Not because consciousness is magical, but because conscious observation involves processing information in ways unconscious systems cannot. You're not passively receiving data. You're actively interpreting, contextualizing, integrating information into coherent experience. And that processing changes the quantum state. The field responds to coherent information processing. When you observe with clear intention, focused attention, aligned emotional state, you're not just witnessing reality. You're participating in which version of reality actualizes. This explains why scattered attention produces scattered results. Why conflicted intention generates conflicting outcomes. Why emotional incoherence manifests as unstable reality. The zero-point field doesn't judge your desires. It doesn't care what you want. It responds to the pattern you're transmitting, and that pattern includes everything. Conscious thoughts, unconscious beliefs, emotional frequencies, energetic signatures accumulated over years. You can't fake coherence. You can't trick the field. Because it doesn't read words, it reads vibration. It processes active information. It responds to what you actually are, not what you pretend to be. So manifestation isn't about technique. It's about transformation, shifting the pattern at its root, becoming, at the field level, the frequency you want to experience in physical form. Because physical form follows frequency, matter follows consciousness. Reality reflects the information encoded in your field. Think of a radio. All stations are broadcasting simultaneously. What you hear depends on the frequency you're tuned to. Change frequency, change station. The signal was always there. You just weren't aligned with it. The zero-point field carries all potentialities, all possibilities, all versions of reality. What collapses into your experience depends on the frequency of your consciousness field. Frequency isn't isolated thought, it's dominant state. It's the emotional, cognitive, and vibrational pattern you maintain consistently. It's the information you transmit coherently. When you want something but feel lack, the dominant pattern is lack, and the field responds to lack. When you affirm abundance but believe in scarcity, the dominant pattern is scarcity, and the field responds to scarcity. Consciousness doesn't create from what you desire. It creates from what you are. And what you are reveals itself in the vibrational pattern you emit consistently and coherently. So the real work isn't visualizing outcomes. It's transforming the pattern, dissolving the belief in separation, cleaning the frequency, making the signal clear. Because the field always responds. It doesn't judge. It doesn't question. It reflects. It actualizes the information it receives. Now notice something delicate. Many people try to manifest results without changing internal pattern. They repeat affirmations, visualize scenarios, perform rituals. But deep down, at the level where pattern actually operates, they continue believing in limitation, continue feeling separation, continue encoding scarcity. And then they say manifestation doesn't work. But manifestation always works. The problem is, it manifests the real pattern, not the superficial desire. So the fatal error isn't lack of technique. It's lack of coherence. It's transmitting mixed signal. It's trying to deceive the field. And the field doesn't deceive. Because it doesn't read words. It reads vibration. It processes active information. It responds to what you really are, not what you pretend to be. Sheldrake saw this when studying morphogenetic fields. He observed that systems only resonate when sharing real structure. Surface similarity isn't enough. There must be deep identity, true pattern. Similarly, you only resonate with desired reality when your consciousness field is truly aligned with it. Not pretending, not forcing, but being. Here's the detail nobody talks about, and this detail explains why so many people fail even when doing everything right. The personal consciousness field isn't isolated. It's entangled with other fields, with collective fields, with inherited patterns, with information stored in the morphogenetic field of culture, family, personal history. You're not just transmitting your conscious pattern, you're transmitting the complete pattern, including unconscious layers, inherited resonances, unresolved blockages. Sheldrake would say you're coupled to the morphogenetic field of your context. Bohm would say you're processing active information that includes boundary conditions you don't see. Different languages, same reality. And this reality explains why sometimes you do everything technically right, but the result doesn't come. Because invisible interference exists, conflicting pattern operating at deeper layer, resonance with frequency opposite to what you consciously desire. Clearing this isn't optional, it's necessary. Because the field responds to the complete pattern, not the superficial layer. And here's the difference between those who manifest consistently and those who live frustrated. Those who manifest don't just have mental clarity, they have internal coherence, alignment at all levels. Unified state. It's not about being perfect, it's about being whole, integrated, non-fragmented. Because the zero-point field doesn't respond to contradiction, it responds to coherence. The personal field carries ancestral information, cultural programming, trauma signatures, belief systems absorbed unconsciously, emotional patterns inherited from parents, teachers, society. All of this runs in the background, shaping the signal you transmit. You might consciously want abundance, while unconsciously carrying guilt about wealth. You might desire love, while unconsciously believing you're unworthy. You might seek health, while unconsciously identifying with illness. Those contradictions don't cancel out. They create interference, static, noise in the signal. and the field responds to the strongest, most coherent aspect of the pattern, which is usually the unconscious one, because it's been running longer, reinforced more deeply, encoded more firmly. So clearing the interference means going beneath surface desires, confronting hidden beliefs, dissolving inherited patterns, integrating fragmented parts of self into coherent whole. So now you know, the quantum vacuum isn't empty. It's the energetic substrate from which everything emerges. And your consciousness is a field interacting with that substrate, not metaphorically, physically, quantumly. But knowing this isn't enough, because there are deeper layers, invisible blockages, interferences operating at frequencies you can't consciously access, inherited resonances, patterns stored in the morphogenetic field of your history. And while those interferences remain active, your signal will stay confused. The field will keep responding to the fragmented pattern, and manifestation will remain unstable. Drop a comment below, 0-point field. Let it be recorded that you understood, that you grasped the depth of this, because the algorithm needs to know this content resonates with you. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now. Turn on notifications. Make sure you don't miss the next steps, because there's more, much more. And the next video appearing on your screen will take you even deeper. It will show you what to do with all this, how to apply it, how to clear the signal, how to access real coherence. The 0-point field is always responding, always reflecting, always actualizing the information you transmit. The question isn't whether it works. The question is, what are you transmitting? Clean the signal, align the frequency, become the pattern. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.